The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Aging Horizons. Today we have a very special guest who is very familiar with you. And we will be talking about suicide, the facts, the figures, the prevention, and all of that. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you knew your next door neighbors couldn't afford to stay warm this winter, you'd want to help, right? Thousands of our fellow Montanans and Montana businesses are stepping up with a tax-deductible donation to Energy Share Montana, a nonprofit that helps more than 3,000 of your Montana neighbors stay warm this winter. Find out how you can help. Call 888-779-7589 or go to EnergyShareMT.com. Thanks, Montana.
It's been 27 years. I never thought I'd still be smoking, but here I am, COPD and all. I'm about to have a granddaughter. There's so much to show her, but I'm scared I won't be able to keep up like I used to. I kind of gave up on myself on quitting. But it's different now. I want to be here for her and for my daughter.
Hey, caregivers, did you know that respite time is your time? How will you spend it?
How about some good old-fashioned me time for starters?
Michelle Smith, Helena.
Or maybe play a high-stakes game of volleyball with my other kiddo. Gotta teach him who's boss, you know? I could even make my famous spinach lasagna. Never hear any complaints about that.
Montana Lifespan Respite. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
Hey, Mom. More lasagna, please?
Sometimes the difference between having the life-saving medications you need and going without is the premium on your Medicare drug insurance. If you are a Montana resident enrolled in the Medicare prescription drug program, you may be eligible to receive help with your premiums, even if you own your home or other assets or think you may have too much income. Call or visit the Big Sky RX website today to find out if you qualify.
There you go, ma'am. See you next month.
Thank you.
Welcome to Aging Horizon. This is a program brought to you by the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. Today we have our special guest with us, Carl Ralston, licensed clinical social worker. He's also the suicide prevention coordinator for the state of Montana. So welcome to the show, Carl.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, suicide at this time of the year, it's pretty tough.
It's tough all year in Montana.
Oh, geez. So what are some of the facts of suicide?
Well, it's not just Montana's not the only state that has this. This is a national epidemic. I mean, Montana in the United States each year we lose more than 49,000 people to suicide every year. But in Montana, and not just Montana, the Rocky Mountain region, we have one of the highest suicide rates in the country in the Rocky Mountain region. And in Montana, we are usually in the top 5. We've been in the top 5 for suicide for more than 40 years. And it's important to understand some of the reasons why, in that suicide is a multifactored issue. And that's what makes it very difficult, is that there's not one single thing that we can say, okay, we take care of this issue and the issue's solved. It's a multifactored issue, and in the Rocky Mountain region, we have a perfect storm as far as all these factors happening at the same time. And so for that reason, the Rocky Mountain region really has a lot of issues going on.
Whoa. So the figures, let's talk about the figures.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about suicide, I know that, like you said, we have 49,000 worldwide, nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we looking at when we come down to Montana?
Yeah, and this is where we have to be careful because we have a small sample size. You know, we have a sparse population compared. So we talk about rate. So nationally, the rate of suicide is about 14.7 per 100,000.
Okay.
So that's the 49,000. But Montana, we have traditionally right around 300, 320 suicides each year. But our rate is about 28 to 29 per 100,000. So basically double double the national rate of suicide, and that's consistent in the Rocky Mountain region. Traditionally, for especially the last couple of years, it's usually Montana, Alaska, Wyoming, but it's really right down the Continental Divide. You know, Colorado, Idaho,
all
Utah,
cool states,
all those states in the Rocky Mountain region are all up around 20 in the 20s as far as that rate goes.
Man, that's scary.
It is scary. It is.
I'm
scary.
looking at it at all the states you named just now, all the cold states. So
well,
is there some linkage?
It's not necessarily. It's not necessarily temperature, but there are a number of factors. Rural. Mm-hmm. So they're all rural states, and that's a factor because access to care, but also crisis response. Geography plays a role in that. Well, for instance, Montana, we're a rural state, we're a northern state, so we get less sunshine.
Right.
Which means we get less vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiencies are correlated with increased risk for depression. We have issues around alcohol. You know, every year Montana's in the top 5 for alcohol consumption per capita, alcohol-related death, DUIs. Well, nationally, about 20-25% of the people who die by suicide have alcohol in their system at the time of their death. Ooh. Montana, it's usually around 30-35%. Another major factor is access to lethal means, primarily firearms.
Right.
Okay. You know, nationally, about 50-55% of the suicides are by firearm. Montana, it's traditionally around 65%. Wow. And also, that is an issue of access. Because bottom line, if you have access to a firearm, if you use a firearm, 93% of the time it results in death. Well, Montana, Wyoming have the highest percentage of gun ownership in the country at about 66%. Another major issue that's consistent in the Rocky Mountain region is stigma, and that's probably one of the biggest ones that we really want to address, is we have that cowboy-up mentality, that sense of independence. We take care of our own. We don't like to talk, cowboy-up mentality. Yeah. We don't like to talk about our problems, and especially when it comes to issues around depression and anxiety, we see it as a weakness, and we see ourselves as a burden. And if you think you're a burden, how likely are you to ask for help? We have a lack of behavioral health. You know, we don't have a lot of psychiatrists in our state. And in our state, about 80% of the people who are on psychotropic medications have never spoken to a psychiatrist. Wow. And so that's an issue. We have socioeconomic, poverty. About 1 in 5 of our kids live 100 to 200% below the federal poverty line. Another one, and we mentioned, those states that were the highest happen to run right down the Continental Divide, altitude. And of course, this is not a Montana or U.S. issue. Worldwide, there's a positive correlation between suicide and altitude. Metabolic stress caused by long-term oxygen deprivation. And so, and you throw in all these factors.
You bet.
And we see, we have a high,
the perfect storm.
Right. Even the population, when we talk, the highest risk groups nationally for suicide, veterans, American Indians, middle-aged white men. We have all of them in Montana. So you throw in all these factors and you start to see why we have such an issue in the Rocky Mountain region and especially in Montana.
Man, this is scary, but I'm sure the audience appreciate all this information we're getting. So let's look at what are we going to do here? These special groups that you have to look at, because I see here you talk about suicide among veterans, suicide among college students, suicide among the elderly. Those are all the special groups that we may have to touch when we come back from our break. So let's stay tuned, and we'll be coming back and we'll be discussing some of these special groups. All right. So, but suicide in Montana is a serious issue. We need to address this. We need to spread the word because
it's preventable.
It's preventable, exactly. Yeah. It's a preventable stuff. So I want you all to stay tuned. We'll be right back. We've been talking to Carl Roslin.
This is Sergeant Jones. Please respond. I was separated from my squad. Requesting backup. Anyone? Please respond.
The human heart, even at its strongest, it's a fragile muscle. Chest and arm pain, shortness of breath, are signs of a heart under attack. But 3 numbers can save a life. Dial 911 at the first sign of a heart attack. Quick response from medical experts can save your life.
I was 45 and it happened to me, a heart attack.
Dialing 911 saved Ryan's life. Now he's here and he's healthy.
This message sponsored by Mission Lifeline Montana.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Can you say ombudsman?
Ombudsman. Benson?
Uma Doodlesman? Fortunately, you don't have to say it right to get the help of a long-term care ombudsman. If you or a loved one reside in assisted living or long-term care, an ombudsman can help resolve any issue. And these services are completely free and confidential. Now, why don't you try that again?
Ombudsman.
We're back. Welcome again to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Wilmot Collins, and we've been talking to Carl Ralston. He's the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the state of Montana. Carl, wow, you just filled me up, and we're not done yet. So let's talk about some of the warning signs. We all have family members. What are we supposed to be looking for?
Yeah, and that's, we in the first segment, we kind of painted a bleak picture about some of the factors.
Yeah.
But I don't want to leave people with the perception that there's not something we can do about it. Okay. There are warning signs, and what we do know about suicide is that it is the most preventable form of death.
Okay.
And part of that is that we have to learn to recognize the warning signs. And what we do know is that more than 70% of the people who die by suicide gave warning signs.
Yes.
And if we all learn what those warning signs are, then we can intervene and we can learn to talk to them what to do about those. So when we talk about the warning signs, there's a number of things that we look for. One, the person starts to express ideations of death. And it's very seldom is it a direct comment. Many times it's a passive or indirect. I'd be better off if I wasn't around. Everybody would be better off if I wasn't here. I'm just a burden. There's often a change in substance abuse. Either they start to use or they start to use more and more. They start to give away possessions of valuables, things that are of value to them. There's often a deterioration in personal hygiene. They start to have difficulty with concentration or changes in sleep patterns. That's a big one. There's often a sense of hopelessness. They don't see future. They're not future oriented. They start to withdraw. They pull away from family. They stop hanging out with friends. They stop doing the things that they usually find pleasurable. They stop hunting. They stop doing. They stop playing sports or stop doing activities. They often they start to withdraw. Sometimes they start to engage in high risk types of behavior, whether it's gambling, illicit drug use. But they start doing reckless types of things. Often in Montana, we see reckless driving or road rage. So we start to see some of that type of things. Overall, though, there's often a change in their mood. They're just not acting like themselves. And that's what we're really looking for, is a change in their personality, change in their character. And that's what we want people to realize. And so if you see these things, if you see these changes in their personality, one of the most important things that we want people to do is it's okay to ask them directly, are you suicidal, or are you having thoughts of killing yourself? It's one of those things that we are afraid to bring up the word. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. There's that myth out there that people think, well, if I bring it up, I could put the idea in their head.
Yeah.
There's not 1 ounce of research to support that. Not one. On the contrary, asking somebody if they're suicidal validates their pain. It creates a sense of connectedness. It reduces their feelings of isolation. It gives them an opportunity to talk. You can do no harm by asking somebody if they're suicidal. It's one of the most important things that we want to convey to people.
Wow. Yes, thank you. I know you, during our break, we'll be talking about working with their primary care. So if I should notice a family member or a loved one, and I'm not sure that I got through to that person, what's my course of action?
Yeah, I would encourage them to go to their primary care provider. You can even talk to their primary care. Now, a lot of times, of course, because of confidentiality, the primary care provider can't say anything to you, but you can always share information with them. And that's one of the biggest things. And matter of fact, it's the kind of the recommendations are changing nationally. It's now nationally recommended that universal screening should be done for depression and anxiety, starting at age 12. So it's really being pushed with primary care that screening for depression should be done with all patients. And so this should be done, but this is a recent change. But primary care is the place where we really want to focus because, I mentioned that we have a lack of resources, behavioral health resources in our state, but we do have doctors, we do have nurses, and it's one of our focuses within the Department of Public Health is to train our primary care providers, our nurses, our doctors on how to do risk assessments and how to do screenings. And so working with our primary care on screening for depression, how to do a suicide risk assessment and safety planning and lethal means counseling to make sure their homes are safe. But these are things that we can do, and we do have those folks in place already in our state.
Yes, indeed. So, so when we're working, like you said, sometimes we think we're causing more harm than good when we start to inquire about the health as to whether they want to kill themselves, they want to harm themselves. And so primary care, what if I don't know his primary care physician, who do I talk to? I say, hey, I'm very concerned about my friend John. Who do I talk to?
Well, you might not, you can talk with them. You talk with them directly and say, hey, can we go to talk to somebody? And can I help you make the appointment? Okay. If for instance, we talk about veterans. If they're a veteran, are they enrolled in VA services? If they are, hey, can we make an appointment with your VA provider? Okay. Or if they're not, hey, can I help you with that making that appointment? I'm happy to go with you.
You bet.
And help them go with it. Even if it's a clinic in a small rural community, hey, can I help you with this? I think that's the piece of it. And we call that a caring contact. Okay. Is say, hey, I don't want to get I don't have to be overly involved, but let me help you here. Let me make a connection. And even if they don't, that's the thing that people have to understand is just let the person know that you care.
Okay.
Sometimes that's all that's needed.
You bet. So we've been talking to Carl Roston. We will be right back. We have so much more to give, so stay tuned.
Sergeant Jones. Please respond. I was separated from my squad. Requesting backup. Anyone? Please respond. I'm all alone here.
The human heart. Even at its strongest, it's a fragile muscle. Chest and arm pain, shortness of breath, are signs of a heart under attack. But 3 numbers can save a life. Dial 911 at the first sign of a heart attack. Quick response from medical experts can save your life.
I was 45 and it happened to me, a heart attack.
Dialing 911 saved Ryan's life. Now he's here and he's healthy.
This message sponsored by Mission Lifeline Montana.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Can you say ombudsman?
Bidsman. Benson?
Uma Doodlesman? Fortunately, you don't have to say it right to get the help of a long-term care ombudsman. If you or a loved one reside in assisted living or long-term care, an ombudsman can help resolve any issue. And these services are completely free and confidential. Now, why don't you try that again?
Ombudsman.
Welcome back. We will continue our discussion on suicide with Carl Roston, licensed clinical social worker and suicide prevention coordinator for the state of Montana. Carl, thanks for all the information you've been providing us. We'll lead off with what happens, sometimes we're talking to our loved one, we're talking to our friends, and they're not willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do?
Yeah, and sometimes we talked about that stigma a couple segment ago. Sometimes the stigma is in the person themselves. They're not ready.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest fears that a suicidal person has is a fear of being judged.
Right.
All right. And we really emphasize that. And so sometimes you may ask the person the question, they may say no, they're not ready. They haven't hit rock bottom yet.
Right.
And what's important is that maybe they haven't, maybe that weekend, maybe the next month, that's when they're going to need the help. And that's when we really want to make sure that they know where they can go at that moment. Okay. And that's where I really want to talk a little bit about our crisis resources. And that's primarily our 988 number that we have. That's the crisis number in our state. That's the mental health and suicide lifeline number. And that is a 24/7 number that you can, if you're the person who's in crisis, or if you're worried about somebody else, you can call. This is 24/7. It doesn't cost anything. It's confidential. The only time that it wouldn't be confidential is if the person is at imminent risk themselves, and I mean that it's life or death. Otherwise, if it's just someone they need to talk to somebody, it's confidential, and that's important. And it's interesting because actually Montana has one of the best performing call center systems in the country. And this is a system that's tied together. It covers every county in the state. We have 3 call centers: Voices of Hope in Great Falls, the Help Center in Bozeman, and Aware out of Missoula. They break up the state accordingly. The systems are tied together. They're available for call, chat, or text. And all somebody has to do is call 988. And those folks that answer are trained counselors that they listen, they can assess. If needed, they can initiate active rescue, or they're connected with the 911 system if needed. But just a little bit about what we're finding is that this isn't just a crisis response system, it's turning into being a primary intervention.
Oh, wow.
First thing that's important is that when I say that we have one of the best, 98% of our calls stay in state. That's important. We don't want to talk to somebody in another state. We want to talk to somebody in Montana. That's the highest in the country. Our response time, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been able to cut that down from about 32 seconds down to about 8 seconds.
Whoa.
And the most important piece that I want people to know about is that more than 80% of our calls, the issue is resolved on the phone. I want you to think about that. More than 80% of the calls, the issue is managed on the phone. No other resources are required. Only about 4% of our calls require 911 or crisis response. What that tells me is that a majority of the time, the people just need someone to talk to. And that's the message that I want people to know, is that if you're in that dark spot where you just need someone to talk to, there's someone there. And that's where the 988 is the most powerful, is there's someone there to talk to you, to get you through that dark moment, to get you through to see the light.
Is there a follow-through?
There is actually. So one of the things that they'll do is they'll ask you, hey, if you're having they get you through that moment, they'll ask you, hey, can I give you a call back tomorrow or the next couple?
Yeah.
And they'll call you back just to check on you. They will give you resources there because they're also tied to what's called the 211 system,
right?
Which is a kind of a community referral system, and they will connect you with resources within your community. And it's not just mental health. Maybe you need transportation. Maybe you need help with food, unemployment assistance, housing. They can tie you into other social service-based through the 211 system.
Wow.
So it's a complete system, and they'll call you back, and they're there for you all the time.
It's
anytime.
almost like a one-stop shop.
It kind of is. It is exactly that. So it's not just crisis. It's an all like you said, all for one shop.
Whoa, that is neat. That is neat. So, what else can we tell the audience about suicide that we haven't spoken about?
I think the most important piece is that that a lot of times depression, mental health issues are a root of it. Not always, but many times it is, and it's something that's very treatable. So it's tied into a lot of other health issues. Now, there's depression can also often be associated with other issues around Alzheimer's, cancers, diabetes, Parkinson's disease. So if you have a family history of depression or anxiety, talk to your doctor. It's very treatable. Bottom line, if you have untreated depression, you're about 25 times the risk of suicide. So it's a risk factor that we want people to know about and to work with your primary care provider. Wow. The other thing is talk to your neighbors, talk to your family about it. Check in with them. That's that caring contact piece. There's so much research showing that if we just are a good neighbor, if we just check in with people, that greatly reduces the risk for people.
Wow. That is awesome, Carl. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to go back to this 988.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about 90% of the calls or whatever percentage of the calls are resolved just on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
It says a lot about what we're doing here in Montana. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I mean, we just need someone to connect with. We want to be able to talk to people. We want to be heard.
Yes.
And that's so important. And that's one of the things that's so devastating about depression is that we can feel so isolated at times, especially in a rural state. Mm-hmm. You know, and then I think just knowing that there's someone out there that'll listen and that can help us.
You bet. Hey, Carl, I want to thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I know my audience appreciates you coming here today talking about this. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.